Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. We don't have much left to do in chapter 2. So we will finish chapter 2 today. And just a reminder, the homework is due tonight for chapter 2. So make sure you get that done. If you've got questions about it, I'm here. I've got office hours this afternoon, so pop in if you've got questions. The tutor lab is open also. So make sure you get that done by this evening. We will start in on chapter 3, and those are our first 3 chapters that are going to be on our first exam. So looking forward just a smidge. Next week, we'll be covering chapter 3. The following week, we'll finish up with anything that we hadn't gotten to in chapter 3. There'll be the exam on Thursday, September 25th. We will do it in a computer lab. I will give you that information, but we'll log in to Connect to take our exams during class time in the computer lab and take the exam in Connect. So your exams are going to be possible multiple choice questions, could be exercises, problems that you are similar to what we did either in class or in your homework. That's what the exams will look like. On the exams, you can bring a 3 by 5 inch note card, handwritten front and back. So whatever you want to put on there, you can bring that with you. You can have a calculator, scratch paper. But you can't have your textbook or your notes or any other outside resources other than what you put on the note card. And I'll try to remember to bring some note cards to class if you need one of those. But just heads up, that's Thursday, September 25th. Also, before each exam, and I've got it due dates set for those, Tuesday before the exam, you're going to have a quiz called a mini test. You'll do that in Connect outside of class. It's not timed. There is no check my work, but you do have just one attempt. So the mini test is supposed to try to give you an idea of more of an exam format that you might see. It's not going to be all inclusive, like this is everything that you'll see, but it's trying to get you a little bit prepared for the exam. Okay, so obviously the content that you see on the mini test, the content from your homework, the things we do in class, those are the things that you're going to have on the exam. I do also, if I don't have it up and running, I have a study guide for the exam. It's not super insightful. It's basically just saying, hey, remember we did this in class, you're going to need to do that on the exam. Okay. And then there'll be an Excel assignment that's due also before the exam. So I'll show you, I don't think I have those live yet, so I'll show you those probably next week, just so you know that they're out there and that they're coming up. But also what's coming up here, we do have our first professional presentation for Beta Alpha Psi, which will be Monday, this next Monday. What the heck date is that? September 15th. So September 15th, is that right? Sorry. It is, yay. Oh, it's when quarterly tax payments are due as well. Excellent. September 15th, 5 o'clock, we'll have career services here. If you're not familiar with WIU Career Services, or even if you are, it's a good refresher about everything that they offer. We'll make sure you're set up in Handshake if you're not already. We'll talk about a little bit about resumes. If you wanted to bring your resume, we might have some time at the end to at least have some people review some resumes. They also do things like mock interviews. They have like a professional clothing closet that you can go and get clothes from. But you'll find out more about that in the presentation Monday night. This would count for a career builder. If you attend, write up your summary, submit it on Western Online. That could count for a career builder. This is applicable for all majors. It's a huge benefit to have something like career services on campus, so definitely utilize it. They're there to help you. So take advantage of it. Another thing they do, people may not realize, is they'll actually print resumes. So I know anymore, like who has a printer? I know you can maybe print some things in the computer lab, but you can actually go into career services and print resumes. At least I think so. We'll confirm that on Monday night. And then just keeping it on your radar, also next week on Wednesday is the Business Career Fair and Spotlight. I do want everyone in my classes to attend it. So we are taking attendance. You can do your write-up and count it for a career builder as well. Yeah.
So I request that as well, so I'm sure.
Well, you'll just, that they want you to attend this?
Yeah,
Okay, so when you go, you'll register, like there'll be a registration table, and so once you're, I think we'll use Leatherneck Link. So then it'll get reported then to your teachers, they can get that registration who was there, so. So yeah, if you have your WIU ID, they can scan it, or you can like type it in.
So I have trouble with registering on the handshake for me to attend.
Okay,
And it's also mandatory with like 2 of my classes as well.
okay, you don't need to pre-register. I know that there is like a registration. I'll look into that and see if I can figure out. I have seen that there are some students registered. We don't require pre-registration. They used to do that sometimes to be able to print name tags. We'll just have you guys like write out your name tags when you come in. So it's not necessary that you pre-register, but when you come to the event, we'll have the registration before you go into the room. So make sure you stop and get registered there before you go in. Okay. So if you're in the market for jobs, internships, like for this summer and beyond, or even next fall, definitely talk to the firms that are there. If you're not at that point yet, we do have, I have 9 now, I'm still working on my 10th. We do have some business professionals from various areas, marketing, human resources, I nailed those down the other day. Accounting, finance. No, I don't have cybersecurity, I don't have actuaries, but so I have should have 10 different business professionals there. So you can definitely go talk to them, have something to say. So part of the Monday night presentation, whether you're doing the spotlight or whether you're going up to a company, have something to say. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the elevator pitch that they talk about, but don't just go up and stand in front of someone and look at them blankly, have a talking point, like, oh, I see that you're a real estate appraiser. Can you tell me a little bit about that profession? Or how did you get to this place? What sort of schooling, or is there a certification? Have something. And have something about yourself too. Definitely if you're going to talk to firms and companies for jobs and internships, they do want to know about you, okay? But they also want to know that you're interested in their company. So the worst thing you can do is just stand there and have nothing. So just pre-prepare a couple of questions, a couple of things about yourself, be ready with something. Sorry.
So we have an ag career on, I think, October, and my minor is very specific, so I feel like there's not gonna be a lot of things there. But do you know if I can talk to somebody with the ag department to try to get open out there for my minor?
Like at this one?
At the ag one, it'll be October 1st. So it's still a little bit of ways away, but I just wanted to prepare for that, and see if I could actually get some
Get someone to come to this one, to be there to talk to people?
Yeah, probably the October one, it's just a little bit, I feel like this week's, it's coming up really soon,
Right.
so.
I do actually have people in ag industry, there's, Carthage. What is it? It's Carthage something. What?
Carthage supply.
No, it's like swine management or Carthage
Carthage
vet. Yeah, Carthage system, the controller for that, he'll be there. ADM has a little bit of ag kind of background. So you can definitely, I definitely want you to go to your ag career fair, but I do want you to go to this and just talk to different business professionals.
Okay, so my minors, past couple of years, they haven't had any cannabis operations since my freshman year.
Nature's Grace will be at the all major one.
They will, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have seen them. And that's another thing, like on Handshake, you can go in and see like what companies will be at various career fairs. So I know that they're signed up for the all major one in the, so I don't, Quad Cities also has like a joint one. They had a lot of like state agencies. I don't remember seeing anything specific cannabis.
I know the possibilities, there are a couple of this operations, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. If you go on a Handshake, you should be able to see that fair too. So that's a good thing to come to the Monday night presentation. If you're not familiar with getting on Handshake and checking that out. And it's also great because not only can you see who's gonna be there, but then you can click in and get information about that company. Particularly when it's like an all major one, you may not know like what the heck is Nature's Grace? Well, you know, it's a cannabis operation to kind of put it simply, but yeah. Yeah, if you were doing the wanting to be recognized for BAP and like being a member, sorry, this is kind of like our informational meeting for like the BAP members or people who are wanting that recognition. To come like at 4:45. So we just have like a short business meeting before the professional presentation. So for those of you who are interested in joining BAP at whatever level of capacity, we had our info meeting this week. Come at 4:45 because we'll do our short business meeting, but the professional presentation will start at 5. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
It's in this room, the.
Yep, in 225, right here. Yes, because I have my stash of napkins and Jimmy John's bags, but apparently not markers and pens, so I had to go get those. Okay. Alrighty. Hey, let's do accounting. Yay. We left off in chapter 2, not there, but let's find it. We were doing that job order cost sheet. If you still have your handout, we had started to do the one that had multiple departments. I think we were just kind of throwing you into that one. So I need to find it. But this was the information you should have had hopefully jotted down. If you don't, have to find mine too. Give me a second. Oh, look, some of my stuff is still up on the board because I didn't have anything to erase it with. Okay. So we're gonna do the job order cost sheet for a job that I'm gonna show you on the next slide. This company is saying they have basically 2 main areas of their production, a milling area, that means like machine work on whatever the heck it is they make. And then the assembly area where the product is actually being put together by your workers, okay? So each department uses a different predetermined overhead rate. Excuse me. The milling department, they're basing their predetermined overhead rate on machine hours. And then the assembly department was basing their overhead rate on direct labor hours. And just as a quick recap, predetermined overhead rate. Zoom in a little bit. It's your estimated manufacturing overhead cost. And in this case, estimated overhead cost for that particular area divided by that estimated cost driver. So for the milling department, their cost driver is machine hours. And for the assembly department, it was direct labor hours is their cost driver. Okay, and we had already gone ahead and calculated before we left the overhead rates for those departments. Let me. didn't give myself enough room. So the predetermined overhead rate for the milling department, their estimated manufacturing overhead. They said that they had $390,000 in fixed estimated cost. And then their variable overhead costs, they were estimating it to be $2 per machine hour. So you had to take their estimated $2 per machine hour, multiply it by their estimated machine hours. And I'm getting that information from the first slide. And I'm covering that up. So we're just looking at milling right now. So to get that numerator, it was your fixed manufacturing overhead plus your estimated variable. They estimated variable to be $2 per machine hour. Take your 2 times your estimated machine hours. Sorry. So their numerator is 510,000. And then you divide by estimated cost driver, which in this case was the machine hours, and they estimated those machine hours to be 60,000 hours. So our next step is to take the 510,000, divide it by the 60,000 hours, and you get a rate of $8.50 per machine hour. So that was our predetermined overhead rate for the milling department. Assembly department, we did the same thing, but you just look at the assembly numbers. So the assembly numbers, they estimated their fixed overhead cost to be 500,000. They're estimating their variable overhead to be $3.75 for every direct labor hour worked. So their numerator, the 500,000 plus the variable piece, they're estimating their overhead cost to be 800,000. Then you have to divide by the estimated direct labor hours, and we get a rate of $10 per direct labor hour. Okay, so all we've done so far is come up with those rates. Yay us. Now let's actually do a job cost sheet. So well, yeesh. I wish they weren't showing us the bottom half. They're basically giving us the answers. I don't like that. Okay, well, poo. Okay, we'll just look at this. So they've got job 407. Good. Let me get my job cost sheet here. So pull out your job cost sheet if you still have that from the other day. Here, I'll cover it up. There we go. Okay, so we want to complete the job cost sheet for job 407. And here's the information. Here's how much time it's spent in milling. Here's how much time in assembly, material costs, labor costs, all that good stuff. We need to do the job cost sheet for it. So job 407. First, we're gonna figure out what the costs were, the product costs were in the milling department. So just take one piece at a time. So just look at milling and fill in that job cost sheet for milling. Okay, so the materials that they said went into the product, into the job in the milling department was $800. Labor cost that went in to the job in the milling department, $70 of labor. And then how much overhead should we charge it? So you need to go back, use the rate that you calculated. So our rate for the milling department was $8.50 per machine hour. And how many machine hours were worked on this job in the milling department? I just filled it in, oh my gosh. So the machine hours that we worked on that job in the milling department, we worked on it 90 hours. So to get your overhead, take your $8.50 times the 90. What'd you get there? Sorry. Okay, 765. So that's all of our job costs for the job in the milling department. And then repeat the process for assembly. So if you haven't filled in the assembly department, material cost, labor cost, what's the overhead cost being charged in the assembly department, go ahead and do that. Thanks for joining. Good to see you.
Where did the,
Let me pull it back. We'd actually done the calculations yesterday, but the calculation for the predetermined overhead rate, sorry, not yesterday, Tuesday. Assembly department, the rate's $8.50. For the, the milling department, the rate was $8.50. For the assembly department, the rate you should use is $10 times direct labor hours. Okay, so everyone get this for assembly? I mean, they give you the material costs in assembly, they give you the labor cost 280. Last step is saying how much overhead you're gonna charge it in the assembly department. So you have to take the assembly predetermined overhead rate, which we had calculated on Tuesday, $10 per direct labor hour. Make sure you multiply it by the direct labor hours just in that department. So again, we're isolating this department for this job, so multiply it by 20. So it's your predetermined overhead rate times the actual activity. And that's it, except we need to total everything up. So that's what our total column is. So, you know, what was the total material cost? What's the total labor? What's the total overhead? So do those if you haven't already. So total materials, 800 a million, 370 in assembly, add that across. should be 1,170. Labor cost at across 70 plus 280, 350. Overhead, 765 was charged for the milling department, 200 for the assembly, at across 965. Total it all up, total job cost 2,485. Questions on any of the numbers, where we got those from? Okay. I think I don't know if they give us unit information, bless you. So there it is, all nice and neat on the slide. What else? Oh, okay. So now they're asking us, what would be the selling price if they do a 75% markup? Put this over here. So they're asking for this, and they're saying if the company does a 75% markup for their selling price, so they're gonna sell it at 75% above cost, what would be the selling price? Have we got it? So 75% above cost is what they're gonna sell it for. You can take your cost, multiply it by 75%. That's another 1,863.75. Add those two numbers together, the selling price would be 4,348.75. Or you could have just, said, whoops. You could have just multiplied it by 1.75 and gotten that answer. So 75% markup on itself. Take the 2,485, multiply by 1.75 to get what that selling price would be. Okay, let me give you an exercise to do. What am I giving you to do? Oh, let's see. We're either gonna do exercise 2-4 or 2-5. Let's do 2-4. 2-5 is in your homework, but they're very similar. So we're gonna do exercise 2-4. You guys have 2-5 in your homework. Pretty much they're doing close to the same thing. So we're doing a job cost sheet again. That seems really fuzzy. I don't know. Can you guys see it in the back okay? Okay. All right. So job cost sheet, 2 different production areas. See what you can do there. If you still have, space on your sheet, you can use your sheet. If not, just make it on your own. And they very nicely give you the predetermined overhead rates, and they're different rates for each department, but they're both based off of direct labor hours. But, you know, with any direct labor, so both of their overhead is being based off of direct labor hours. They didn't tell you how many hours the employees are working, but you should be able to figure it out. Because they give you the direct labor cost, then they say that they're paying $20 an hour. So hopefully you can figure out how many hours they paid for. Yep. Or to get the manufacturing overhead, start with 9 hours. Thank you. Yeah. Then the labor costs. So the labor cost is what you. Yeah. But I mean, as far as what you're. So if you think that. You should end up with a total job cost of $753. Total job cost of $753. Do you have a handout for the other day? So, I'll need to scrap that I got. You know, this is like other glass. Okay. All of them, it's just trying to this job. It's being put together into some good. The assembly area. So we're gonna look at what the costs were. Assembly parts. So what those costs were, tested. Yeah, so most of it, there are things, you know, they're saying direct materials and assembly. They choose a so a lot of it's just. And then for overhead, not yet.
So second sentence says increase services and rates. So the assembly department is $16 per hour. So capital goods, that's $16 for the rate. They're saying in the assembly department, they use a rate of $16 per hour. So then we would look at the number of hours that are placed with this. Pay $180 labor, so the rate of their $6 an hour. So you say 180 divided by 40 is 20. So location 9 hours. So this you would say 16. Just tired. 16 times 9 hours. That is. And those two like the same thing as the last year. I don't have a lot of fun, so. I'm so sorry. I feel like how one, I can say that one, I mean, it's not gonna have on the class. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Here we go. This is the easy part, right? They gave you all this information, so. How much did it cost to make this job in the assembly area, in the testing and packaging area? You're just gonna track all the product costs. So direct materials and assembly, 340. 25 in the testing area, add that across, our total material cost, 365. Same thing for direct labor. They gave you the numbers, fill them in, add them up. Okay. Both of the areas were using direct labor hours for their activity. And they each had a different rate. And that was given to you. So for the assembly department, they said the rate was, the predetermined overhead rate was $16 for every direct labor hour worked. That's what we're gonna charge. So for assembly, the rate was 16. You need to multiply it by how many hours were worked in the assembly department, which they didn't tell you. They said labor costs were 180. And that they were paying their workers $20 an hour. So if our labor cost was 180, we're paying $20 an hour. How many hours did we pay for? We were paying our workers for 9 hours, right? So for the overhead, for assembly, scribbled. You've got 9 hours times the rate is 16. We're gonna charge it $154 of overhead costs. Okay. Repeat the process for the testing area. The testing area. The predetermined overhead rate was 12. So they gave you the predetermined overhead rate of 12. How many hours did your employees work? Well, we paid them $40 in total. We're paying them $20 an hour, so that must mean that they worked 2 hours for us. So to calculate your overhead, take the rate of $12 an hour, multiply it by the 2 hours that our employees worked in that area. You've got $24 in overhead costs that you're charging it for there. Fill that in the total column, add them up. 144 plus 24, so that's total overhead cost of 168. So this is just adding across to get these numbers. That was supposed to be an arrow. We're just adding across. And then total it all up. Material cost of 365, labor of 220 plus overhead of 168. That's a total job cost of 753. So total job cost 753. That was the answer to number 1. So for number 1, the answer is 753. It's blurry again, not sure why. If job N60 consists of 10 units, what's the unit product cost? So if our total job cost is 753, there's 10 units in this job, what's the unit product cost? Or you can think of it as cost per unit. So cost divided by units. So 753 divided by 10. What's our unit product cost? 75.30. Question. So you've got exercise 2-5 in your homework. Similar to this. And we're all gonna be 100% on our homework, right? Okay. That's all I have for chapter 2. Questions about chapter 2? All right, we'll start chapter 3 today. As long as I have a voice. In chapter 3, we have handouts that I did not print off and bring to class. So if you go to where? If you go to when you go into Connect from Western Online, if you just go to the Connect like homepage, in the chapter 3 folder, it says handouts. So you can click into that and download what's there. So the one that we're going to be looking, there's actually a couple of them, but the one we're going to be looking at today is this.
Oh my gosh, do you remember T accounts from 201? Here's some T accounts. Oh, and they're color coded too, so if you pull it up, you can have color coded T accounts as well. Oh, and it doesn't even fit on the whole screen. Here, there's more. Okay. Anyway, so this is me just trying to diagram everything that we're gonna do in chapter 3. So you see the T accounts, so guess what? We're gonna use T accounts. We're gonna do some journal entries. Woo! Journal entries. This is the only chapter we're going to do journal entries and have to do debits and credits in this class. So prepare yourself for debits and credits. Let's have a quick refresh, shall we? What's debits and credits? So every account in our company, so we're gonna have a separate account for every asset, every liability, every stockholder equity, every revenue, every expense. We can envision it as a T account. So we put the name of the account up top, underneath it a large T. And on the left-hand side, that's the debit side. On the right-hand side is the credit side. So what does debit mean? It means left. Credit means right. Oh, there was that song. Did I play you that hideous song? Debit on the left, credit on the right. Don't make me pull that up on YouTube. Okay, so does a debit increase an account or decrease account? If it's a cash account, a debit, if I put the number on the left-hand side, the debit side, it would increase it. If I wanted to show a decrease to cash, I would put the amount on the right-hand side or on the right-hand side or the credit side. And if you remember, you know, if you had 201 here, or if you used the textbook that we did, they use this dealer acronym to help us remember debits and credits. And what the heck did that stand for? The D, E, and A, that was dividends, expenses, assets. So we're showing the D, E, and A on the left-hand side, the debit side. That means all of those accounts, they increase on the debit side. So if I wanted to show an increase to an asset like cash, if I wanted to show an expense increasing, if I want to show dividends increasing, I put the amount on the debit side. So if I want to decrease it, I would put it on the credit side. Sorry, that was supposed to be CR negatives. So if I want to decrease those accounts, I would put the amount on the credit side. So D, E, and A, left-hand side of the acronym, left-hand side of the T account, those are all accounts that increase on the debit side. On the credit side, the L, O, and R, liabilities, owner equity, which was another way to say stockholder equity or common stock. So I'll just kind of write that down here, common stock. And then the R stands for revenue. So all the things written on the credit side, those are all accounts that increase with a credit. Okay. So if I want to show an increase to an accounts payable or notes payable, that's a liability. I owe someone money, I show that on the credit side. If I want to show my revenue going up, I put that amount on the right-hand side or the credit side. If I want to show a decrease, then I would debit. So if I want to decrease these accounts, I would show it on the debit side. So the dealer is just an acronym to help you remember. The other thing that we used in 201 is, hopefully you remember this accounting equation. And kind of in a more simple terms,
Everything on the left-hand side of the equation increases on the left, on the debit side. Everything on the right-hand side of the equation, liability, stockholder equity, increases with the credit. Say that right? Assets on the left increase with the debit, liability, stockholder equity on the right-hand side increase with the credit. Okay, so we're gonna do some journal entries. What are journal entries? Oh my gosh. We'll just look at one as we go through these. So basically, we're gonna look at all of our product costs that happen, you know, we're creating these jobs, all these product costs, where they go on our financial statements, what accounts they go into, and then what financial statements. So we're gonna walk through that whole process. So that color-coded T accounts lays it all out. That's everything you need to know for chapter 3. So we're gonna do all of these. So I'll probably keep popping back to this. Okay, we're gonna walk through the example that is in the PowerPoint slide. And then we're gonna be working through a problem at the same time. So what we do today, make sure you bring it back with you next week because we'll keep working on it next week. I'm not sure what's happening. Where is my PowerPoint? It's someplace else. It's over here. Okay, so we're going to see these job order costs. We're starting with the job order costs and then we'll move into those non-manufacturing costs as well. We're gonna do it all. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's just get to the problem. Here we go. Holy cow, we're gonna get there. This is them showing the T accounts that I also showed you. But anyway, starting off, we're going to first look at our product costs. So we need to have some materials. We're gonna take those materials, you know, move them into particular jobs that we're working on, all that good stuff. So let's look, oh, I wish I didn't show you. We're gonna go through everything. Here's our example. I would say if you don't write down the journal entry, at least, oh shoot, I didn't bring it with me. At least let's start recording this into the T accounts. But hey, this is a journal entry, okay? Here's what happened. On April 1st, Ruger Corporation had $7,000 in raw materials on hand. During the month, the company went out and purchased on account $60,000 of raw materials. So if we haven't talked about it, let's talk about it now. We're gonna have an inventory account called raw materials inventory. So when we go out and get materials that aren't placed into production yet, like we're just holding them in storage until we need them, that goes into our raw materials inventory account. Raw materials inventory is an asset, so we're saying it's going up 60,000. And on account means we haven't paid for them yet. So we owe that supplier money. And you might remember from 201, I owe someone money, that's accounts payable. It's a liability. Liabilities increase with a credit. So this is a journal entry. The journal entry, the account you're gonna debit has to go on the first line. The dollar amount on the debit side, which is the left-hand side. The account you're gonna credit comes second. And you show it in the credit column. Okay, so let's at least, we're gonna do the T accounts for it. I'll have us write out some journal entries too. So raw materials inventory, let's do a T account. And they did say they had a beginning balance. So when you go to do your chapter 3 homework, they're gonna give you beginning balances. Make sure you put those in first before you do any of your journal entries. So we want to have that $7,000 in there. That was the beginning balance. And then they said, hey, we went out and got some more materials. So our materials, and I'll just label it transaction one. We went and got more materials that increased the account. We increased the account on the debit side. So increases over here, decreases our credits. I'm not gonna do a T count for accounts payable. I'm just concerned with the job cost stuff. Okay. Moving on. Aha, I'm covering up the journal entry. Oh, how sneaky. Okay, here's what happened next. During April, materials were requisitioned. We're pulling $52,000 of raw materials from the storeroom to use in production. 50,000 of that was a direct material. And 2,000 of it is considered an indirect material. So we're taking it out of our inventory, raw materials inventory, and putting it into production. So we also have another inventory account called work in process. So it's also inventory account, which is an asset. Assets increase on the debit side, decrease on the credit. And you can think of the work in process account as your job cost sheet. Okay, so all those job costs that we just did on the job cost sheet way back in chapter 2. Materials, labor, overhead, that's all gonna go into this account. So how much came out of raw materials? 52,000. So I need to decrease raw materials. So I'm gonna show a credit to raw materials to show it going down. I'm taking that stuff out of there. How much was a direct material that went on a job cost sheet? 50,000. So 50,000 of it went into work in process. I like pictures. Isn't this a little bit nicer? Yeah. What do we do with indirect materials? Do we remember chapter 1? Where do indirect materials go? Manufacturing overhead. Okay, so manufacturing overhead, indirect materials, rent on factory insurance at the factory, all that factory stuff that's not direct materials, direct labor is gonna go here. And they said 2,000 of it was an indirect material. So my arrow is getting a little crazy. So I've got 2,000, that was, I'm just gonna say it's an indirect material. So indirect materials would go into manufacturing overhead. So for overhead, oh, sorry, question.
So are we gonna make a list for each different thing that covers something that's not, because the raw material is separated because we got a process, so 50,000 that goes to that process, and the other 2,000 goes to another teacher or manufacturer over here.
Yes. Oh, sorry, was there a question?
Um,
Okay, in this example, we did have 3 accounts that were impacted, so we're taking things out of raw materials. Where are they going? They're going to 2 separate places, so we do have 3 things that are impacted. When we go to do the journal entry, we'll kind of look at, as long as, you know, your accounting equation stays in balance, your debits equal your credits, you're all good. But you do have to show like what's happening. So in this case, it was 3 things. Sometimes it might just be 2. It could be 10 different things. We won't get into that though, but I don't think so. On your manufacturing overhead account, on the debit side, these are where all your actual manufacturing overhead costs are gonna be recorded. So this 2,000 that came out of that raw materials inventory, that was an actual cost. So all of our actual costs will be here on the debit side. There we go, deep buzz. Hey, don't forget the journal entry. So we've already, by doing the T accounts, we know what was a debit, what was a credit. So we have a debit to 50,000 to work in process, a debit to overhead of 2. We have a credit to raw materials of 52,000. To write this out in a journal entry, it's gonna look like that. So remember, journal entries, you list the accounts you're gonna debit first, and then the account that you're gonna credit comes last. So I think it's easier to do the T account first and then write the journal entry, or whichever works for you. So work in process goes up with a debit, 50,000. Manufacturing overhead, those actual costs go in as debits. Raw materials inventory was going down. So to decrease an inventory account, we have to credit it. Are we good? Oh, look at this. We're moving on to labor. Labor costs depends on what they are as to where we put them. Okay. So if we're paying, in this case, they're indicating we're not paying them cash just yet, but they're using salary and wages payable. So they're saying our employees have worked for us. They've turned in their time card for the week. We haven't paid them yet, but we owe them the money. So they're saying we've got salaries and wages payable. We have a liability that's going up. We owe them the money for the week. If it was a direct laborer, so someone hands-on making it, that's part of that job cost. It needs to go into work in process. So remember, your work in process is that job cost sheet. Direct labor costs are gonna go there. If it was indirect labor, like the janitor at the factory, the supervisor's salary at the factory, that's gonna go into your manufacturing overhead account. Okay? So let's look at their example. Okay, so here are the time tickets for the month. The employees' time tickets for April included 60,000 of direct labor, 15,000 in indirect. So in this example, I'll just put salary. So they're saying in total, I owe $75,000. So salary and wages payable. Salary and wages payable, that's a liability. So they're saying your employees have worked for you. You haven't paid them yet, you owe them the money. You've got a debt, you've got an obligation, that's a liability. Liabilities treated on credit side. So I owe my employees 75,000. 60,000 of it was for a specific job, direct laborers working on a specific job. So 60,000, my arrows are gonna get a little bit out of control. 60,000 would go into work in process. No. There we go. So in your work in process account, we've got direct materials and direct labor. Do I have the right numbers? Did they say 60? Yeah, question. Yes, here. Yeah, this is a liability account, so liabilities increase on the credit side. let me just make sure my numbers are good. Yeah, okay. Oh. Okay. And then they said 15,000 of this was indirect labor. So maybe that's the janitor at the factory or the security person at the factory. So indirect labor cost. That's gonna go into manufacturing overhead. You've got a total of $75,000 that you owe your employees for working. 60,000 of it is work in process for the direct labor. 15,000 of it indirect, that's gonna go into manufacturing overhead. Journal entry, we have a credit for 75, we have a debit for 60 and a debit for 15. Put your debit accounts first. So the accounts that you're gonna debit come first. Here's your journal entry, debit, work in process. You'll have to do journal entries on the homework and on the exam. So debit, work in process, 60,000. Debit, manufacturing overhead, 15. And then your credit comes last, credit, salary, wages, 75,000. How we doing? We've got time for one more, right? At least. Let's see what's next. Ooh. All right. Oh. Okay, here's our next one. We also had all these other factory costs. We had utility costs at the factory were 21,000 that we owe money for. We had rent on factory equipment, other factory overhead costs. Apparently we haven't paid them. We owe for all of these costs. So these are manufacturing overhead costs. So all of those need to go in our manufacturing overhead account. So I'm doing it on the manufacturing overhead account. I'm gonna need to show 21,000. This was for utilities. 16,000 for rent at the factory. So these are all factory costs. 3,000 for other miscellaneous factory costs. So all of our actual manufacturing overhead costs go in on the debit side. I think on this one, they're saying we haven't paid for them yet, so we would have an accounts payable for all of those. Accounts payable, again, is a liability. So you would show the amounts on the credit side, you know, so 21,000, 16,000, 3,000, but probably you would just show that as one number, okay? And I'm too lazy to add it. So what is that? 40, 50, 40, okay. So manufacturing overhead is gonna be debited for 40,000, all of our actual costs, accounts payable, if we haven't paid cash for them, or they could have said we paid cash. So you could swap out accounts payable for cash going down, you could have credited cash if they'd said that they'd paid for them. Accounts payable gets credited 40,000. We showed it separately. They were just showing the numbers combined, so we showed it separate. On your homework, they're gonna wanna show just the 40,000, everything combined. Okay. All right, this seems like a good stopping point, doesn't it? Yeah, okay. Make sure you bring this back with you. Well, we didn't start the problem. Well, just always bring your notes back, but we'll pick up here on Tuesday. Don't forget about the presentation Monday at 5 o'clock. I'll try to remember to put something on the announcements on Western Online.
And that's fine. What we just did with the key accounts, can I just take a picture of it real quick?
Oh, that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last part.
Yeah, feel free to move it right, not so messy.
Perfect, thank you.
Uh-huh. Give me just.
Where's my, like a list of businesses that are gonna be at the business group?